After years of passing more conventional capabilities by, I think it is time for the Marine Corps, and the Gator Navy for that matter, to get serious about getting the very most out of their soon-to-be fielded, extremely expensive and controversial F-35B force. At $150 million a pop, they need to be more than nicer Harriers. Treating it as an advanced Harrier will hardly leverage the huge investment in opportunity cost and treasure that this aircraft represents. The uber-complex F-35B, with its unique capability to take off and land in short distances, while retaining a decent majority of the conventional F-35A's range and payload, is really a fantastic capability that makes this particular model of the Joint Strike Fighter the most strategically relevant out of the three variants. With the fielding of the F-35B, the Navy almost doubles its theoretical first day of war, fixed-wing capable, carrier force. This means that more ships capable of operating high-performance, low-observable, multi-role fighters, can be in more places at a single time. This enhancement to America's naval power projection capability will complicate the war plans of any potential peer-state belligerent, and will result in a highly relevant strategic boost for the U.S., especially in the dawning age of air-sea battle and the Obama administration's attempted pivot towards the Pacific theater. The short takeoff and vertical landing optimized F-35B is so capable because its close relatives, the USAF's conventional runway-operated F-35A and the Navy's catapult and arresting gear, cat and trap, configured F-35C, paid a huge price aerodynamically and conceptually in order to include the short takeoff and vertical landing, STOVL, requirement into the Joint Strike Fighter's basic design. In the name of commonality, the F-35B, with its huge box-like central lift fan, along with its complex drivetrain and downward swiveling exhaust nozzle, basically handicap the aerodynamics, and in essence the very concept, of its more conventional Navy and Air Force brethren. In other words, some would say that the F-35 was built as a STOVL aircraft first, and then adapted to a standard and carrier fighter second, instead of the other way around. The F-35B design demand of lifting 20-plus tons, near vertically, on a pillar of thrust, are simply so consuming that they compromise the potential performance, and to some degree the cost, of the other two more traditional, less engineering-challenged F-35 variants. Oddly enough, the Marines' F-35B order only represents about 14% of the DoD's total F-35 buy, yet the other 86% of aircraft will handicapped by the F-35B's unique design requirements. When the JSF's baseline design was finally locked, the aircraft was left with a massive fuselage cross-section, as well as a single engine with a huge circumference. This, along with many other STOVL-related design results, gave the more numerous A and C versions of the jet an airframe that is far less than optimal given their basic sub-design's goals. This conceptual strategy, known as commonality, was supposed to save money and speed the aircraft's delivery to the front lines when compared with building 2 or even 3 separate primary designs that share avionics subsystems. This strategy, one that many predicted was more of a sales ploy than a relevant procurement and design concept, has now been proven to be far less than ideal, and its benefits borders on nil in actuality. Once you set aside the constant flow of It's Always Sunny in Fort Worth, where Lockheed builds the F-35, manufacturer propaganda, the stark reality is that if the Joint Strike Fighter program had not been bogged down with the STOVL requirement, the Air Force and Navy, and the other nations that are now customers of the F-35, could have likely had a much better fighter. One that is more robust, features better range, super cruise capability, enhanced payload and much greater agility, and all at a lower price tag. So, in the end the Marines will get the finest replacement for their AV-8B's Harriers that they could have ever wished for, while the USAF, Navy and partner nations, over 90% of the F-35's entire production run, will get an aircraft that has paid dearly for granting the Marines their golden short takeoff and vertical landing 5th-generation fighter wish. Now that the DoD is so heavily invested in this flawed design philosophy, and presumably will not cancel the F-35 program as a whole at this point in its evolution. The idea of not procuring the most strategically revolutionary model of the lot, F-35B, and the one that the other two more numerous sub-designs will pay a high performance and capability price throughout their design lives for, would be beyond stupid. The fact that some aviation experts and some Washington bigwigs say we could, or even should, cancel the B model alone is absurd, as we would end up with two compromised designs, the A and the C model, without the unique strategic payoff of the third design, the STOVLB model, that made these compromises exist in the first place. The whole situation is really an odd scenario where aerospace design, politics, metrics, conceptual force structure planning and opportunity cost converge, and not in a pretty or organized way. So with all this in mind, my advice to the Gator Navy and the Marine Corps is to get behind the F-35B in a big way, and this goes far beyond fighting to see that the aircraft is not cancelled and rushing it past an erroneous initial operational capability goal line. The Marines need to immediately highlight to the public the strategic opportunity that the F-35B presents to the nation, and prioritize funding to an ecosystem of uniquely F-35B-centered support infrastructure and force-multiplying capabilities that will allow the jets to realize their full potential. In doing so, the F-35B force could positively revolutionize the Marine Expeditionary Strike Group's utility forever. The idea that the F-35B will work like its predecessor, the AV-8B Harrier on the decks of Navy amphibious assault ships really does not give the aircraft's attributes the credit it deserves. Deploying a state-of-the-art, low-observable, supersonic and highly networked asset like the F-35B in place of the Harrier is like trading in a 1960s Mustang Cobra for a brand new Corvette and then just using it to do burnouts. A metaphor that is both accurate in regards to the aircraft's capability and its complexity. The AV-8B is missionized and tasked primarily as a close air support asset, although the classic jump jet, at least those AV-8B plus jets equipped with second-hand APG-65 pulse Doppler radars, have recently received the ability to employ the AIM-120 AMRAAM operationally. Seeing the F-35B in the same light, as primarily a close air support asset, is ridiculous. The F-35 was built to penetrate enemy air defenses and strike at the heart of their ability to wage war via direct attack for low and medium-class counter-air environments, and via the use of standoff weaponry for extremely high-threat scenarios. And yes, it can provide close air support as well, but you do not need a stealthy F-35B to do that in the vast majority of foreseeable combat situations. For instance, the probability that we are really going to be landing hundreds, if not thousands, of Marines on beaches where we do not have air superiority above their heads is quite low. Such a dire circumstance, especially at first glance, seems to represent a fairly antiquated view of amphibious operations. Even if a lightning-fast, over-the-horizon, sneak beach landing on an enemy shore were realized, things like LCACs, landing craft air cushion, amphibious fighting vehicles and thousands of Marine infantrymen are hardly stealthy. Thus, the F-35B's ability to leverage the element of surprise will be all but eliminated. With this in mind, the question arises, do we really need stealth assets overhead during a beach landing at all? In a time of emerging long-range precision naval fire support and helicopter gunships bristling with guided munitions, there are many other, and far cheaper, options for close air support than a relatively short-ranged and high-speed stealth fighter. In most circumstances, the F-35B will do the close air support job far better than an upgraded AV-8B Harrier, but where the F-35B's real talents lie are in its ability to give the Marines and the Gator Navy much more than just a new high-speed precision close air support platform. Suppression or destruction of enemy air defenses, set or dead, also known as Wild Weasel operations, advanced counter-air and electronic attack to some extent, are all capabilities that the Marine Expeditionary Strike Group does not currently possess in an organic fashion. Instead, these flotillas would rely on external assets to get the job done during a time war. Even deep strike missions are more a job at BGM-109 Tomahawk cruise missiles deployed on escorting cruisers and destroyers than by the Marine Strike Group's composite air wing. Currently, such capabilities as SED-DED, counter-air and electronic warfare, EW, are provided by Navy or even Air Force aircraft, such as the F-22 Raptor, Block 50 F-16CM Viper, EA-18G Growler, FA-18EF Super Hornet and so on. With the addition of the F-35B to the Marines' inventory, varying levels of these capabilities, all of which are potent, will now be within the Marine Expeditionary Strike Group's own repertoire. But that is not all that the F-35B provides. For the first time, the Marine Expeditionary Strike Group will have a ship-deployed fixed-wing platform that can provide deep strike, counter-air, advanced penetrating reconnaissance and advanced electronic intelligence far into highly contested territory. In other words, these Marine-centric flotillas will possess the same baseline capabilities as their larger cousin, the Carrier Strike Group will have, although in a lower density format. Also, whereas the F-35B's ability